Hello everyone, back tuning in to today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's second video, which will take us around the 21st of March. We'll be able to extend out beyond that. We extended GFS and ECM ensembles running to around a couple of weeks. And we'll have a look at CFSV2 at the end of the video. Next 4 weeks takes us into the beginning of April. The 5-day forecast has just been released, so we're on unsettled 5 days again. Low pressure will continue to bring further bouts of rain, not the sort of deluge rain that we've had that we had back in February, but it will be quite unsettled, quite a mixed 5 days coming up. So have a look at that, see what's going on. There could be a little bit of hail snow mixing, especially in the north. We're going to begin this video with developments stratosphere-wise, because we are now seeing an end, and quite a dramatic one too, to the very intense and powerful stratospheric polar vortex that has been dominating the Northern Hemisphere. Not just UK, but the entire Northern Hemisphere has been dominated by this very, very intense and strong stratospheric polar vortex. For the winter, we are now seeing a final end to it, or signs of what will be the final end of it, and quite a dramatic way, but it's going to go out as well. So we'll start off with that. These are the temperatures at 10 HPA over the North Pole. So the black line shows where temperatures have been through this season at 10 HPA. The grey line is the trend line. Remember, 10 HPA is like the very top of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. So at this point of the year, of course, temperatures should be lifting up now. We bottom out in terms of the coldest temperatures at 10 HPA sometime around sort of late December into start of January, and then temperatures lift up through the first months of the year, eventually reaching their peak through the summer, and then start to drop away again as we get towards the end of the summer and into the autumn. So at this point, the temperature should, during early March, be somewhere around -50. Where we actually are is still a bit colder than average. Not as cold as we have been at 10 HPA, but nevertheless a bit cold on average still at around -55, something like that. So we are still a little bit below average in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA currently, albeit nowhere near as cold as we was back in February when we was down around -70. So temperatures are beginning to lift up at 10 HPA, but not dramatically so. And they are still a little bit below where they should be at this point in March. If we go low down to 30 HPA, though, this is into the troposphere, or near the tropospheric level. It's like the end of the stratosphere, just to the start of the troposphere. There we can see still a very dramatically colder than average. So at this point, we should be around -60 at this point in March, where we actually are is just above from -80. So we have left -80. I mean, we was below -80 for quite some time during February. We have left that behind. We've sort of gone to -78, -77, something like that, but still way below average. I mean, we should be, the grey line shows that we should be around there. Where we actually are is down here. So still really, really cold. Much, much colder than average at 30 HPA, which again is very close to the troposphere, kind of like heading into that boundary level between the strat and the trop. So yes, very cold there. Temperatures have lifted up a bit at 10 HPA, but still slightly colder than average. The stratospheric polar vortex goes on. However, we are seeing signs of quite a dramatic change to come. So this is the GFS temperature forecast for 10 HPA over the Arctic and the North Pole for the next couple of weeks. So where we've got these blue colours, of course, temperatures around -55, something like that. 10 HPA, I've already confirmed that's around where we are at the moment, just still a little bit below average, but not as cold as we was a few weeks ago. But where we've got the blue colours, those are the cold temperatures at 10 HPA. Now, as we run through, what you're going to see happening is quite a dramatic warming begins to develop on the Atlantic side of the Arctic, which is quite unusual. Normally, stratospheric warmings and southern stratospheric warmings develop from the Siberian side. This warming, this final warming, I think, of the stratosphere is occurring from the North American and Atlantic side, beginning to move in towards the North Pole. And as we go into the more extended range, talking about the blue colours being pushed off over towards the Pacific side of the Arctic, And just a very, very pronounced warming taking place here of the stratosphere at 10 HPA as we come into the second half of March. Moving up towards day 10, that intensifies further. This is the 21st of March. This is reaching sudden stratospheric warming levels. It is going to be a death knell, I think, for the polar vortex. This is going to be like the final end of the polar vortex and its roots in the stratosphere. And yes, it does reach sudden stratospheric warming levels there around the 22nd of March with those red colours right over the top of the pub. This is very significant, and will undoubtedly see an end to this incredible stratospheric polar vortex that we have had through this winter. A bit of a shame to see it go, really, because it's been so powerful and so strong through this winter and has driven in all of these areas of low pressure and westerlies that have been dominating all winter. It's all been driven by the stratospheric polar vortex that has been acting as an engine, really, to drive everything else. And this is the end of it, or this will be the end of it as we go through the spring. This is how this season's stratospheric polar vortex will end. It will end with this major warming of the stratosphere that will sort of sound the death knell for the polar vortex. Now, what we've got to consider is, because it's not just fading away, this polar vortex, it is actually going to be sort of knocked out by a final very significant warming of the stratosphere. So what we have to consider is whether this might set up northern blocking as we go further on into the spring. That's as far as we get to 27th of March. There's normally a bit of a time lag on this, affecting the troposphere, so it won't be an immediate end to the polar vortex in the troposphere. That will end sort of later on into the spring, and it could be replaced, because this is quite a significant warming of the stratosphere, it could be replaced by some northern blocking as we go further on into spring. And I would sort of pinpoint later on into April for that. So it could be that this is going to be one of those years where we get quite a cold snap at some point during April. I wouldn't rule it out, and on the other hand, I wouldn't say, but it's for definite that we will. But I think it's something that we've got to be watching out for. We've got to be alert for this as we go into April, that we don't set up northern blocking and quite a cold interlude at some point during April. So it'll be one to watch, I think, as we go further on into the spring. The chance of some northern blocking, perhaps, as we move further on into April. So this is depicting the strength of zonal winds at 10 HPA. So this is another way of looking at the polar vortex. Essentially, you've had a very, very strong zonal wind at 10 HPA during this winter. The blue line shows that at times, sort of record-breaking strong zonal winds. Again, at this point of the year, the black line shows that the zonal wind should be dropping out. The zonal wind should be weakening as the polar vortex weakens, as the temperature lifts up at 10 HPA, so the zonal wind should begin to weaken. We're going to see a massive deceleration of zonal winds in the next couple of weeks. So this is where we are right now. Again, we are at record-breaking levels with the zonal wind, as we was at this point last year as well. The green lines here are from the GFS ensembles, and they show not yet a reversal of zonal winds in the next couple of weeks, but certainly a very dramatic plunge in the zonal wind from where we are right now to where we're going to be like in 10 to 14 days time. Very dramatic deceleration of zonal winds, and if we combine that deceleration of zonal winds, even if the zonal wind doesn't quite go into reverse, it may go into reverse as well, by the way, but even if the zonal wind doesn't quite go into reverse, that is such a massive deceleration of zonal winds that, combined with this very dramatic warming of the stratosphere that's occurring around day 10 or just after day 10, again, I think you do have to be watching out for the chance of northern blocking potentially setting itself up later on into the spring. And we know that in April in particular, cold northerly winds can be quite they can be quite troublesome. They can cause a lot of problems for growers in particular, particularly fruit growers, as late season frost, and even in April you can get snow still. So even in April, it's possible to get snow, and that can have impacts on fruit blossom in particular. So this will be something to watch, I think, as we get through to April. The possibility of a bit of northern blocking associated with this deceleration of zonal winds, and also combined with what is quite a significant warming of the stratosphere that's occurring in around 10 days' time. One to watch. These are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. So the red line is at the 30-year upper air temperature average for rugby today. So we're starting off pretty mild at the moment. Temperatures are actually going to drop, though, in the next 24 hours. It's going to become a bit colder. Over the weekend, the temperature lifts up for a while. I mean, it's a bit up and down, really, as we're going into next week. So we've got cooler and also warmer sectors alternating with one another. Late on, as we go towards the last week of March, this period just here, it looks as though overall the GFS ensembles are going really quite mild, even spring-like, although there are a few cold outliers, most notably, I'm sure you've noticed it, this thick green line just here, which is the latest GFS operational run, the 6 o'clock GFS operational run. That's doing a bit of a plunge. It's a cold outlier. But it is suggesting something colder from the east, actually. I'll show it in a moment. It's suggesting something colder from the east as we go towards the last week of March. Precipitation-wise, so more rainfall coming up into the early part of next week, and then we have got this drying trend still. It's possibly taking a little bit longer to start to build in the ridge through next week, but I think eventually we will get there, and we will get into some higher pressure, hopefully. Temperature anomalies from the 11th to 19th of March, a little bit above average for England and Wales, a bit below average for Scotland and Northern Ireland. That's been the case for the past few days. Precipitation anomalies from the 11th to the 19th of March, drier than average for much of England and Wales, wetter than average for Western Scotland and northwestern parts of England. That's how the GFS is looking for Sunday, so low pressure coming in off the Atlantic on Sunday, producing showery outbreaks of rain. Into the early part of next week, where we have a go at building up the Azores high, but this next low is rolling in over the top, so certainly the early part of next week now is struggling to settle. Eventually, by the end of next week, we are under high pressure, 1,030 millibars, so we are delaying the high pressure ridging in properly by a couple of days. But by the end of next week, we are under that area of high pressure, which turns all of us drier. Remember, high pressure is well and truly in control by day 10, which is Saturday the 21st of March, albeit high, moving up towards Scandinavia, and we are bringing quite a chilly easterly into the south, and that easterly gets colder as we move into the extended range. We saw this on the ensemble graph a moment ago. We know that this is a cold outlier. This solution is not well supported by the GFS ensembles, but the GFS operational runs have been showing this quite regularly over the past few days. Possibly this is associated with the deceleration of the zonal winds. But anyway, we've got winds into the east here on the 22nd of March. The easterly is coming across the continent. And there is quite a cold pull that's sitting just to our east as well, over Poland and Germany, being dragged in on those easterly winds. So this is Monday the 23rd. We are in a properly cold easterly wind there. And that is cold enough to be producing snow showers, particularly across England and Wales. Yes, there is a chance, if that was to come off like that, with a minus 10 Celsius ice firm across England and Wales, that we could generate snow there. So it's not too late on the 23rd of March to get snow. Then the high pressure begins to push itself over towards Iceland and Greenland. And that starts to have a go at setting up some genuine northern blocking. It doesn't quite come off. We finish up with a high sort of sat over Scotland. So mainly dry as we go into the last week of March, but quite cold still with that. Certainly cold enough for overnight frost. As ever, where that high pressure sits as we move into the second half of March is a very critical factor. The GM looks like this, so unsettled over weekend. This is all covered by the 5-day forecast, of course. Bit of a cold snap early next week. And then in comes the ridge. Now, the GM is strengthening the ridge across England and Wales early next week. So that does bring a nice spell of mainly dry and spring-like weather to England and Wales early next week. Scotland, Northern Ireland has cloud and rain too. Then we move up towards day 10, and again, high pressure is taking over. So it takes a little while to get there, but By day 10, 21st of March, we are under that area of high pressure. Quite chilly air coming around the high. So if you follow the isobars, the air is coming from up here somewhere around that region. So it's certainly not going to be all that mild, and there could be some night frost in with that too. Not the easterly, the long fetch easterly that the GFS is setting up though. And then we've got the ECMWF, which again looks quite unsettled on Sunday with showers, if not some longer spells of rain. Early next week, we have this ridge from the Azores high building across southern areas, so that brings a spell of spring-like weather to England and Wales. It's more unsettled still for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Into the second half next week, then the high pressure begins to take over more, particularly so for England and Wales. Scotland is still a little bit unsettled with this area of low pressure just here, but gradually it is starting to turn drier and potentially very mild through next week. I think the ECM out of the three is the mildest solution for next week, and that could easily see temperatures into the mid-teens Celsius for southern parts of the country. By day 10, the highs just begin to pull out to the west of us, starting to allow winds to come in from the west-northwest again. But very different to what both the GFS and the GM is showing with the placement of that ridge. Remember, the GFS has the high pressure, although it's an outlier, but the GFS operation run has a high pressure over Scandinavia at day 10. The GM has a high pressure over Scotland at day 10, and the ECM has the high pressure sort of in the middle of the Atlantic at day 10. So as ever, I keep saying it every day when I do these videos, as ever, the placement of the ridge is a very critical and important factor in terms of what the weather itself is doing. It is going to turn drier up to day 10. We can say that quite definitively, as all three models are building in high pressure, albeit are taking a day or so longer to do it through next week. But they are all building in high pressure. But the feel of the weather will be determined by the position of the ridge. And of course, that will be important in terms of whether it's a cold area of high pressure or whether it delivers spring-like weather, or a combination of the two, maybe cold nights but relatively mild days. These are the options on the table within the ECM ensembles today for day 10, which gets us to the 21st of March. I have 15 members of the ECM ensembles that have high pressure sitting over or just to the east of us. And they're bringing like an east-southeasterly wind. So that's probably pleasantly mild and spring-like by day, but could be quite cold by night. 15 have the ridge to the west and to the south, and the trough to the north. They're flat, westerly, mild, and probably quite settled, especially for southern areas. 8, including the control and the operational run, have the high pressure over and then to the west of the country. Again, it's relatively dry to day 10 with those, and mild and spring-like. 7 are much more unsettled. These ones just here have low pressure coming in from off the Atlantic, so that's back to the westerlies. And then 6, a minority option, so as we saw in the GFS ensembles, the idea of a long fetch easterly and cold weather from the east around or just after day 10, not well supported. That option is in there within the ECM ensembles too, but again, not well supported. Only 6 going in that sort of direction with like an easterly wind. So the chance that it goes very cold sort of just beyond day 10 from the east is there. It's a possibility, but it looks relatively unlikely, unsupported at the moment. However, as we go further on, this is how things look in terms of the options in 2 weeks' time. This is the 26th of March. And then we have 19 members of the ECM ensembles that have a proper Scandinavian high, and they're bringing in easterly winds. So it may take a bit longer to get there, but eventually we might start to generate some easterly winds by the end of March. 17 have low pressure dominating from off the Atlantic. They're unsettled and, of course, relatively mild. And then 15 just here have us under high pressure. That's going to be the driest and also warmest option. That's proper spring-like weather under that ridge with those 15. So very inconclusive where we are by the time we get through to the last week of March in terms of the options. And then finally we've got CFSV2, so these are 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly periods. The first weekly period will take us from the 11th to the 17th of March. Coming week is still unsettled. Low pressure comes in from off the Atlantic, so already established at least up to around Monday, Tuesday, relatively unsettled conditions. All change to week 2 is the 18th, 24th of March. Then high pressure takes over to the east and through the country and to our west as well. Low pressure's out to the northwest with a jet stream that's turning us drier, but it could be a bit on the chilly side. That could be bringing in wind from the east, actually. So it could be a bit cold from the easterly winds. Then we're into week 3, which is the 25th of March to the 31st, last day of the month. And the above average heights then are more or less centred over the top of the country. The difference with this is that it's much milder as winds are back in from a west to southwesterly direction. So that ends March on a spring-like but also relatively dry note. And then week 4 is a bit interesting. This is the 1st to the 7th of April. We're still nominally under a little ridge of high pressure, but clearly from like what's happening in weeks 2 and 3, that ridge is weakening a lot. Low pressure developing there, low pressure developing there, and also there. So it looks as though this ridge is coming under pressure from low pressure as we go through the first week of March, and this could be a transitional period, maybe going more unsettled. Who knows? It's a long way out. It's week 4, but that does imply that where we are, I mean, that's how things look in week 3, very strong ridge, but by week 4 the ridge looks much weaker, much flimsier. So it might be transitioning to something much more unsettled for the first week of April. And as I say, as we go through April, because of both the deceleration of zonal winds, which is very cyclical, that will happen anyway as we go through the spring. We will get that deceleration of zonal winds, but also combined with what appears to be a very significant warming of the stratosphere to bring an end to this, and quite a dramatic end to this stratospheric polar vortex that we've had all winter. Because of those two factors, I think we do have to be watching out for some northern blocking as we go on into April. And that might, of course, it depends where the block sits, because if one place on the cold side of the block, somewhere else will be on the warm side of the block. So it could do something like bring very cold air into Western Russia, but for the UK and Scandinavia, we're on the warm side of that block, and we actually get away with quite a warmish sort of April. So that's a possibility, but I think whichever way it works out, we do have to be watching out for an increasing risk of northern blocking as we go through to April. If that comes off, if we do get the northern blocking in April, remember where you heard it first, and if it doesn't come off, then, well, don't remember where you heard it first. Right, so that's it for today's videos. Tomorrow we'll have a week to 10-day video update, again, bring you an update with all of the latest developments. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.